And first, I would like to share with you some mentor texts I use to organize our course. Okay, those are not textbooks. We're not gonna follow them chapter by chapter. Those are optional reads that I used to organize the materials for you. And this is also the foundation of the positive discipline approach, which is the main approach to social and emotional development that we are going to learn about. Okay, so there are three books about positive discipline that I put for you. There is a book called Future Wise. We are going to discuss a chapter of it, and I'm going to scan the chapter and leave it on Google Classroom for you. You do not have to buy any of those books, just for you to know where the ideas come from. They are not coming from my mind only. Then there's Redirecting Children's Behavior and Grit. So those six books are the ones that I mainly used for the concepts of our course. Okay, so how is this course going to work? I'm going to illustrate everything here for you and in our syllabus for you to understand what to expect. So this is a 15 hours course. We're going to have 10 minute meetings. Each meeting will have 90 minutes each. We're going to have a little break in the middle. And they are divided in 5 modules. Okay, number 1, which is what we start today, is called When Brains Meet Inside a Classroom. So we are going to start our course by looking as in a magnifier inside our own brains and our students' brains, how they develop the social and emotional skills, what to expect, like what brain structures are ready and what brain structures are not ready at that age. Okay, so this is where we start. Hi Talita, welcome. I'm sorry. The ownership of this first lesson was still with Rodolfo, who organized the meeting, but the ownership of the other meetings will be with me. So I was waiting myself too. I was here waiting as well. So we've just started. Okay, I'm sorry. First day things. So this is the module 1 on when brains meet inside a classroom. Maybe this will be too technical for some of you. We're gonna name brain structures. We're gonna look inside the brain so we understand what's going on here, so we know what to expect on behavior, and further on how to understand where the behavior is coming from. Okay, this is really important. Then 2, social and emotional learning. What does it mean? In the second one, we're going to look at official documents here in Brazilian education, at definitions of what it is and what it's not, and how it fits in our classrooms. Then 3, Karin mentioned that when we go to bilingual schools, one of the challenging is actually balancing the curriculum and the social and emotional learning, especially in a year like last year that we were teaching from home with so many challenges. So, module 3 is specifically about how to balance your curriculum as a language teacher or international teacher and the social and emotional learning. Then we are going to, throughout the whole course, we're going to learn behavior management strategies. But specifically in Module 4, we will look at some research based behavior management strategies according to the positive discipline approach. And at the end, at the last module, you are going to build a real life social emotional learning experience. So I'm gonna mentor you through designing a project, an experiment to your own classrooms. Okay, so at the end we are gonna practice a bit. How our interactions gonna happen? First, through Google Classroom, and second, in this email. Okay, this is my email, peaceful.disciplinapositiva@gmail.com. You can send any sort of questions, any sort of help you might need. You can always talk to me in this email. Okay, I'm gonna switch screens So I show you our Google Classroom. Are you familiar with Google Classroom? Yeah. Okay. So sorry, Talit, you even wrote here. Is anyone else waiting? We were all waiting. I'm really sorry. So now I'm glad you're here, Talita. So I'm always going to put here in the feed in the Google Classroom the presentation I use, the visuals, okay? There's always going to be some sort of task for the following week. And for this first week, your task will be to read a short article. Okay, so the article is already here. At the end of the class, I'm going to explain on what you will be looking at in this article, what we'll be trying to find out. Okay, for each class, I will also provide you with an extension reading. The extension is not the article we are going to discuss in the upcoming class. It's something for you to read, to go further on the concepts personally, and those extension texts might be longer than the one we'll discuss. That's why they're not mandatory. And you can download, you can read later, you can save them to read on your holidays, not this month and not this semester. But they are interesting material for you if you want to really go deeper into the concepts. Okay? And I'm also going to link here on our Google Classroom any online activities that we do. For example, today we're going to work on a Jamboard, a collaborative Jamboard, and the link will be here for you to see the contributions that the other people left on the board. So this is how we are going to work on Google Classroom. You can always use the comment section to ask me questions. And if you have something specific that does not fit in any of those posts, you can post here in Google Classroom and I'll be glad to help you. So during the course you had this issue with Joãozinho in the classroom and you simply are running out of ideas. You don't know what to do with Joãozinho. So you can describe what's happening, what you've already tried, and you can ask me, Bia, you can call me Bia. Bia, could you give me some insights? Let's think of some strategies. I cannot wait until the end of the course. I have to do it right away. It's an emergency in my classroom. I cannot teach because Joãozinho is doing this or that. So, or my group does this or that, or I have issues with parents. So you can send anything here and I'll be more than happy to help you with doubts about the course and doubts about things that happen in your daily routine. All right, so let's go back to the other material. Any questions about the Google Classroom, girls? No? All right. So let's start our module 1 when brains meet in a classroom. As we have 5 modules and 10 meetings, you might imagine that each module is divided in 2 lessons, okay? So today we'll have the part 1 of the brains module, okay? It's called Getting to Know Our Brains, Executive Functions, Social Perceptions, Relationship, and Memory, okay? And next week, we're going to carry on the biological approach to a teacher and student bond, all right? At any moment during this lesson, please interrupt me if you have questions, okay? You can raise hand in Google Meet or just open your mic and ask me any kind of question, but please do not leave the lesson with doubts, okay? So what you need now is to get a notebook or a paper and you will draw a compass, like a draft, like this green one I have here with north, south, east, and west. So you're gonna get it and draw this compass, the compass points. And for each compass point, we are going to write our own perceptions about positive discipline and social and emotional learning. Okay? No worries. Yeah. Okay, so you can just draw a simple compass, not a very complicated one. This is not an art course. I'm not an artist myself. That's why I didn't draw anything. I just put the clip art here. Cause yeah, so north, south, and east and west. Okay, the directions we might take as teachers in our careers. Where are we going to? Where we actually are? Where is our student? For each, I'm gonna wait for you to draw the compass points and then I'll speak because I don't wanna bother you with it. So I'm gonna wait a minute. All right. So let's start on east. Okay. East is E and as in excited. So when you think about positive discipline, so when you think about this word discipline, what excites you about this idea of having discipline, a positive discipline? We're going to learn more about what it is in your classroom. What's the upside? Think about the concept of a discipline. This is E for East. And then when you've written down, you can open your mics and share. Okay. Then in West, worrisome. What do you find worrisome about this idea or proposition? What's the downside of a discipline? A positive or a negative or any kind of discipline? Or looking at the social and emotional aspect of the pupils? What's the downside? What makes you worried? Okay, this is West. And at the top on North, it's for need to know. So, what else do you need to know or find out about positive discipline, about social and emotional learning? Okay, how will it help better evaluate what's going on in your classrooms? Okay, and S, it's the stance or moving forward. Okay, a suggestion for moving forward. Let's especially think about how might you move forward in your evaluation, in your strategies by using positive discipline and social and emotional approach. All right? So jot down your ideas about the directions we might take. And as soon as you're ready, you can share. All right, Lenora, don't worry. Thanks for letting us know. Ready to share, girls? Karen, Talita? All right. All right. Who goes first? All right. Okay. Yeah, you can share it. Mhm. As far as you went. You can share anything. Yeah. Hmm. Okay. And what about you, Karen? Thank you, Talita. What? Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, precisely, girls. So it's nice how the word discipline always catches our eyes. And by the word discipline, its origin is like make followers, to create followers. And throughout the centuries, it just got a connotation of a physical discipline or damage or threat, and in a hierarchy where the adult is here and the child is down there. But actually, when we say discipline, we are always going to think concerning positive discipline of making followers. So we are going to understand our own behavior as well and how to encourage the children to follow the good behavior input, the positive, the respectful, and the empathetic behavior input they get from the environment, whether it's from us or from their parents or from their peers, but to follow this positive input. Okay? So let's carry on. This is your brain, the big boss. And when we look at our kids, let's say Karin's students, fifth graders, maybe their brains are just like this. My plan, recess, sad best friends, yummy, fun, thirsty, I'm not tired, and jumping, spooky, homework, practice. Many things going on their brains, and the teacher is there. We're at the other side trying to teach a language or math or social studies, and we're like, ah, they're not there. How do I get inside? I'm the teacher. I need room in this brain. I need to, somewhere. I need to fit in there with my lesson, with my activities, with the curriculum. How do I fit in there? So those are some names. I don't know how familiar you are with them, but we are going to use some of those names, okay? And it's important for us to see. So this is our brain. We are looking like sidewards. We are looking sidewards, okay? And we have here in the yellow our frontal lobe. We're gonna learn what each of them does. Then we have the cortex, the parietal lobe. The occipital lobe is this one that if we touch here, we can feel a bone here on our back. This is the occipital lobe. Underneath it, okay, we have some muscles here on our neck. If we touch the bone and we go downwards, we're going to feel muscles, our neck muscles. Under the neck muscles, we have the cerebellum and the brainstem. They are super protected and important structures, and they are protected by those muscles and they are a little bit protected by this bone, okay? And we have here, like close to our ears, the temporal lobe. All right? Done with the names? Ready for more names? Let's go deeper. So many things go inside our brains. Of course, we see, we think, we have our memory, we taste, everything goes through the brain, okay? But related to our course, we are going to talk about the limbic system, okay? Now, in this structure here, it's the same picture of the brain sidewards, like this. But let's say we sliced the brain, okay, in the middle, and we are looking at half of it. So this is what you're seeing in the picture. And in there, down there, and this is super important and super interesting, in the very middle, in the core of our brains, lies the limbic system. It was first studied and described by a doctor, James Pappas, okay? And the limbic system is a set of structures, so it's not only one, but several tiny parts at the core, at the center of our brain, that deal with emotions and memory. Okay, so those things biologically they work together, the emotions and the memory. It also regulates in the same place where the emotions go on, the autonomic and endocrine function, which is, our hormones, our responses to run, our responses to be afraid, and to trust and not trust. Okay, it's all in the same place. And it's also involved with reinforcing or not a certain behavior. So by that, we can see all the things that go on in a student's head by only looking at this set of structures, the limbic system. So let's say we have a student that comes from a background of other teachers and other adults that always gives him special attention only by bad behavior. So the cycle is, I have this bad behavior, Then people call my parents, my friends, my teachers, my peers see me. I go to the coordinator. Everyone calls my family. Then my family talks to me. Then the teacher keeps talking to me. And when they forget a little bit about me, I try that behavior again because I know I'm gonna get them back in the circle, in the cycle. Okay, this is the limbic system talking. It's all unconscious. It's not the student who's telling you that. Okay, we're gonna learn more about how those things are related to the behavior we see, but it's very important to always remember that the reinforcing behavior area, the hormones, the emotions, and the memory, those four things are on the same spot. They are in the brain, the same spot. Or, for example, a student that does not trust herself. I had a student that in first grade, she didn't trust herself enough to write. And she would refuse writing because of first her stress hormones were all over her because she was being pressured to write and she was being compared by the adults to other kids. Okay, the reinforcing behavior was that she would run from the classroom, literally run from the classroom, and a teaching assistant or the teacher would go after her and write for her. So this was the reinforcing behavior. And, therefore, the memory was connected to when I am in this stressful situation, I run and people will rescue me and do the task for me because they feel sorry for me and maybe they regret um, what they taught me or giving me that task, and they do the things for me, and everything happening inside the limbic system. Okay, and also we have two very important structures. Okay, the amygdala and the hippocampus. Okay, so inside this hippocampus, this limbic system, we are going to talk a lot about limbic system today. We also have the sensations of pleasure, fear, and even addiction. And even addiction for kids and for adults. It's on this same area that regulates the behavior we see. So the behavior we see, whether it's positive or negative or challenging or aggressive or empathetic, respectful or not, is connected to all of that I've shown you in the previous slide, the memory, the hormones, the emotions, but also to the feedback that person receives from the environment that gives him or her either pleasure, fear, or causes addiction. Okay? And we also have the hippocampus, what I've told you about. It's where important memories are created, emotional memories, but also learning memories. So here is our spot. Here is the pot of gold of being a teacher and studying about social and emotional learning. The learning happens at the same, anatomic place as where the emotions are, processed. Learning and emotions, they are in the same spot. Just as we have a nerve here that takes the information right from our eye to here the occipital cortex where we see, and I can immediately see you on my screen. There's no delay in where Talita moves and then 5 seconds later I see in my brain. No, it's like at the very same second. It's really fast. The connections in the brain, the speed the information travels through the nerves, through the neurons, is really fast. And in the same speed, information travels in the limbic system, where the learning might or might not happen, and the emotions might or might not be dealt with, and the social and emotional skills might or might not be developed. It's on the same anatomic spot, and this is really important for us. Okay, inside our friend limbic system, again, there's this tiny, tiny circle The circle you see inside the circle here on the slide are really tiny spot called the thalamus. Okay? It's where we have the sensory perception, we have the arousal and the alertness reaction, and this is either interesting because we are teaching or not because it could be stressful and the student is too alert and too excited that the learning does not happen. Also, the thalamus is where the emotional aspects of the behavior are. So the behavior driven, the emotionally driven behavior, and not the logic driven behavior. What's emotionally driven behavior, Bia? So let's say we are this student is in his first day at a new school. He doesn't know anyone, and he's so afraid and so embarrassed and so afraid and so embarrassed and so afraid and so embarrassed that he cannot talk to anyone. And this is an emotional driven behavior. We see the behavior, but it's being driven by all the emotions going on in the limbic system. And the thalamus is the big boss of the emotional driven behavior we see. Okay? And it's also an interesting part. Look how many things happen in our emotion center. Let's call it the emotion station. How many trains pass through the emotion station in the brain? The integration of sensory impulses, motor functions, and even our somatic functions. Okay? They go through the neurons, they make like a net. If you put on a microscope, of course I wouldn't bring you this because it would be too boring for you, but I really like this area. If you get the neurons and you have them on the microscope, you would see they like a net. They are all connected. So we have this big area that regulates the behavior. You will showcase to people outside, and passing through this big area, we will control the sensory impulses. Remember the time that you were so happy in your childhood that you can even smell the moment. You can even smell like my grandma's cake, or you can even smell that garden or that barbecue or something, that it's so linked to the emotion that you have the sensory input of that moment archived in the same place in our brain. It's archived in the same place, okay? And this is where if we think about making a lifelong impact in our students, this is where we are looking at. That's why we're looking at our brains, because things are going on together. Motor functions as well. If when we are stressed and we started feeling like our back is hurting and we cannot walk, or when someone is telling you something that you are you are completely opposed to, and you do not agree at all, and it's disrespectful, it's unfair, and you start feeling your heart racing, but you cannot say anything. Have you ever felt like that? Or at least you have to wait to say something, but you start feel your heart racing and your hands shaking and sweating, and it's all connected to your emotions. And I once had a student that he was so embarrassed and so afraid of math that he would go to the bathroom and have a very bad time there, that he always had to go to the nurse whenever it was math time. Like, he had this big math trauma. And the somatic functions, so controlling his bowel, is connected to the emotions. So when he saw it was math, even though it was with a new teacher, which was me, he he couldn't do it. He couldn't help himself. He had to go to the bathroom, and he always had a very bad time there. And once he even had to go home to change after going to the bathroom because he just heard that the next lesson would be math. So those things are all connected, okay? And what's very important, it's not under our control. They happen according to the input we have. So if we exercise our brains to work on all of those functions only after negative inputs, They will only happen according to negative inputs. If we practice, if we exercise the brain, our own brains and our students' brains, to act and react according to positive reinforcement and encouragement, which is what we'll learn further on, this is the result we are going to see. Okay. And also about another important area is the hypothalamus. It also helps us under stress. Under stress, it releases hormones for us. And a very important stress hormone, which is cortisol. It's we cannot call it only the stress hormone because it's the hormone that actually helps us wake up in the morning. And waking up feels really good. Sometimes, most of the times, it feels good because we are having the right amount of cortisol. If we are waking up on the holidays in the place you love, close to people you love, it feels so good to wake up. At cortisol at the right amount, it's great. Cortisol at the wrong amount means fear, stress, I'm gonna run out of this place. Okay? So now we are gonna do like a little game with our hands. All right. I know you've learned many brain names and you are not on a course to be neurologists. You won't be operating on anyone's brain tomorrow, so you do not have to memorize all those names. But I've shown you the proof that the structures are there and the functions are all at the same place. Okay. So we're gonna look at our hands and we're gonna try to memorize three parts of the brain. Okay? And here at the bottom of our hands, at the red dot, we are gonna call it the let me think of a name for it, a nice name for it. The impulsive brain. The impulsive functions of our brain. You know, the I'm gonna run away of here, I'm not gonna hear you, I'm too afraid, I need to go to the bathroom, I'm too scared, I cannot understand what you're saying, I cannot understand a word of English because I panic. This is the impulsive brain. Okay? Here in yellow, in the middle, we are gonna have our memories. Our learning memories, good and bad, they're gonna be here. And over here at our fingertips, we are going to have our cortex, which is our reasoning, our logical thinking, our perceptions, our ability to analyze, to balance, and to make decisions. Okay? Okay with the hand? So let's say you are in the classroom. And when you are in the classroom, your brain, emotionally speaking, is under control because this part we're going to close our hands. This part here for decisions, for reasoning, logical thinking, making good decisions, and decisions based on previous learned concepts. It's the part of the brain that is leading your actions, okay? And the impulsive brain and the memories, they are safe. They are being used because our brain is never off. It's always being used. So the impulsive brain and the memories, they are being used, but they are being regulated by the cortex. So you remember that once that person did something for you, but you can regulate your behavior and just help the colleague who's asking for help. Okay, or you know that student drove you crazy last week. But you are starting from scratch. You're going to give him another chance. You are regulating, you're making a decision, you are reasoning. This is how your brain is working. And isn't it good when the students work this way as well? They are not impulsive. They are not being based only on their memories and traumas. They are being super controlled and balanced and everything. And this reasoning area of the brain is always making the big decisions. Okay? Isn't it great? But what actually happens is that sometimes the students are like this. So this part of the brain is not even there. And the parts that are leading the behavior, that are there the most are the memories, good and bad, the traumas, the experiences, and the impulsive brain. And what frequently happens is when we see the behavior caused by the memory and impulsive brain, as teachers, and I relate there, I've been there, I am there with you, we do the same. And this is how the true brains look like. We and the students. And no one is regulating themselves. No one is reasoning. No one is thinking. We are just on our survival mode. And on the survival mode, I know it's necessary sometimes, but it does not help it doesn't help us learn or make decisions or reason or think and use the higher functions of our brain. We are just using the reflexes, the impulses of our brain. We're not using the higher functions that we have, as humans. So this is what stress, this is what negative discipline, this is what challenging behavior does to us. And according to the positive discipline approach, and we are gonna learn strategies of how to do it practically. And we have something in our brains called the mirror neurons. Okay, they mirror, they automatically mirror the attitudes seen in the environment. And as teachers, as we have the knowledge and we have our hearts and we care about our groups, it's our responsibility to be the one that brings the reasoning and the thinking and this cortex, the frontal cortex that we call, back to leading the conversation, back to leading and solving the problem and solving the situation. And as we implement it and as we are consistent in doing that, we are going to help our students to mirror this strategy, to emotionally mirror this strategy of first, I'll balance myself. First, I will connect. When you do this and your student mirrors you, you are connecting. And only after connecting you can start the corrections. You can start guiding your students towards their best behavior and what they can achieve better. Okay? So when we are like this, we connect and then we correct. And what I mean correct is that according to positive discipline, we are gonna see behavior and we know we cannot lie that here. We know they are not appropriate. It's wrong behavior if you were lying, if you were stealing, if you were not respecting the teacher, interrupting others, being aggressive to others, okay, and all sorts of things, or refusing to do an activity, being super not motivated at all to do anything, okay, not participating. This doesn't work in society. We know that this won't work in the long run for our students. And this is where we want to remedy it. It's time, there is time, and the time is now. So, first we connect our brains. So, then we start the correction of the behavior. So, this will be a very important motto during our course, the connection before the correction. Okay, so looking at the brain and then applying strategies to regulate the behavior and looking at the brain, so then you can apply a social and emotional skills, and so you can develop a curriculum, activities, projects. First you connect. Okay, we're also gonna learn the biological basis of how we connect. Ladies, we should take a little break now, like 5 minutes, but do you have any questions so far? Sure, Talita. It will be in our Google Classroom. The same one that you sent the comment, it will be there, the materials, and there will be some extra resources too. Okay. So let's take a break, ladies, some 5 minutes, and then now it's 27. So at 32, 8:32, we get back. All right? See you soon. Please, ready to get back? Is everyone there? Let me know if you can hear me. Then we can start it. Okay. Hi, Giovanna. Good evening. Hi. Yeah, sure. Oh, thank you. I'll take a look, Lenora. Ah, yes, I'm recording the audio of the full lesson. Okay, I'm not recording you because I do not have your permission to record your images or your voices, but I'm recording my voice. Okay, so I'm gonna put it on Google Classroom. I know we are having connection issues today, so the full lesson, while I was speaking, there will be a recording in the Google Classroom, a long one. You're gonna have to be a little patient to listen to it, but the full lesson will be there. Okay? It would be nice for you as well, Giovanni. You can hear, and at the end, I'll go through Google Classroom again so Giovanni and Talita see how it works, and then I'll let you know how I can better support you as well. Okay, Giovanna? So now, girls, we are gonna talk. We've talked about the anatomy of the brain and how impressive it is that so many areas of our lives are connected in the big train station of the social processing and the emotional processing. Everything passes there. The learning, the memories, the stress, the traumas, and the communication, everything passes through this train station. And this is the station where we work at. We are actually working there. That's why we need to know all the trains passing by. And we are going to learn about three very nice and important trains that helps us understand the behavior we see in the classroom and the learning outcomes of our students. We call them executive functions. Okay, they are very practical, and I bet you've seen them today. If you taught a lesson today, you've seen them today. The inhibitory control, the working memory, and the cognitive flexibility. Bia, more names. Come on. It's almost 9 p.m. and you're giving us more names, okay? So those are not brain areas, they are brain functions that happen in all of those areas we learned, okay? And let's talk about the working memory. The working memory is the function of our brains that helps us do several things at a time and relate what we are doing now to something we've learned. So when you ask your student in a project about habitats, you ask them, okay, so let's assemble a poster, and in this poster you are going to put information about the habitats book we read last week. He will also try to organize a bar graph with the statistics of the habitats that have been destroyed over the past years. You were asking them to access the math knowledge, the science knowledge, the writing knowledge, the visual knowledge to see how things are going to be spatially organized on this poster, the communication center to talk to peers because it's a work in group. This is the working memory. It's a function that helps your brain move while working and while doing a task, and doing it nicely in a respectful and productive way. All right? Cognitive flexibility. Cognitive flexibility is for when you change your mind or when you learn something new and you just have to archive another concept. Okay, so let's say that your student tries to solve the math problems, and that very same way that never works. It never works. He always gets the wrong result, and you've just shown him a new way And he learns it at first, and that's cognitive flexibility working. Or you've been showing him the new way for several classes in a row, and he never gets to learn it. That's the cognitive flexibility not working. Or when you've learned how to manage behavior for so many years as a teacher by sending kids to the coordinator. Okay, you've learned that it works. If I send them to the coordinator, it works. And I don't have to deal with behavior the coordinator has. But then you've come to this course and you've learned so many things that you've changed your classroom management strategies. That's your cognitive flexibility working. Or when we learn a new language, we learn that we won't say caneca anymore. If I'm talking in English, I'm going to say cup. And that's my cognitive flexibility. I'm changing how I name objects according to the environment I'm in and the language people speak in this environment. That's cognitive flexibility working again. And the inhibitory control, the name itself already explains this function. It's the ability to control what's in your brain. Okay, so sometimes we just have the craziest ideas in our brains. Sometimes we are too stressed and we want to say something, or we are so angry that we want to do something, but we don't. And that's the inhibitory control working. And sometimes in the classes, we see it not working. Okay, so I had this student that while we were 100% online last term, he would open his mic all the time to show us the video game. All the time. And that's the inhibitory control not working. Not working at all. How do we make it work? This is what we're learning about. How do we help it work? So those are the executive functions. Now there's a little bit of a theoretical terminology here. Again, you do not have to memorize all the brain names. You just have to get the overall idea. Okay, so those functions, the inhibitory control, the working memory, and the cognitive flexibility, how are they turned on? How do they happen? They happen there inside the limbic system, okay? And they happen according to, let me get the pointer here. Maybe it's gonna be better. Okay, let's start here. They happen first because they are being goal directed. There is a goal behind each behavior. We are going to learn that according to positive discipline theories, there are four main goals of the behaviors, but we are going to save that for later. But just keep in mind that the executive functions, they are managed, they are regulated by goals. And here is where we ask ourselves, what goal am I encouraging my kids to have in the classroom, in their learning? Are those goals explicit? Are those goals built with them? Are those goals part of their reality? Okay, I once was teaching a toddlers, so 2 and 3 years old, and the goal was not, it wasn't designed by the girl herself. It was designed by her parents. They want her to be approved at an university abroad. So that's why they wanted her to speak English at 2. And they would tell her that frequently, that you had to learn English to go to university abroad. And she would be so uncomfortable even singing nursery rhymes at circle time that at some point I just had to talk to the parents that she should design her own language learning goal. And yeah, she was just 3, but she, with my help and help of the teaching team, she would learn how to see that her goal as a 3-year-old was to speak English, to make new friends at the school, to talk to the teacher, to talk at snack time, to sing songs. and not to be approved in the university. So those executive functions, they are oriented, modulated by goals, okay? Goals that are created or there are really solid and really real for the person, for that individual. Once that goal is settled, okay, we have effective learning and adaptation. Why adaptation? Because those executive functions, those three, as I told you, they might or might not work. So you might adapt them to work, or you might adapt them not to work for a student just to hide the function according to the environment, the interactions, how the authority is placed in the classroom, and they won't work. All right? Another interesting thing about executive functions, they are influenced by the genes, okay? By the genes. So I once had a student that her father had dyslexia and she had dyslexia too. And the whole cognitive flexibility was, awful for her. It was really hard for her because she couldn't understand the letters how they actually were. Imagine understand the letters in other ways, in other contexts, like reading a text. It was too much. So she needed a very specialized program to learn how to read and write because those executive functions they can be modulated by the genes, okay, in case of dyslexia, of attention disorder, depression, and we have like a several list of things that can be influenced by the genes. And that's why it's always nice and important to talk to parents, to talk to the family whenever possible, so we know the background. The executive functions, those three, they can also be modulated by our stress responses. So your student might be a very flexible student, as a team worker, a super balanced and controlled person. But when he's in a stressful situation, like taking a test for the university, everything goes wrong because he learned how to regulate himself with you but not in other situations. So he's not regulating himself, he's regulating him when you are around. And we're going to learn how to help our students develop their inner balance, their inner detective of emotions, so they have the good behavior and they have the positive results when they are with us, which is lovely, which is what we want, but also when they are not with us, or when they are in stressful situations, or when they see themselves like seeing a scene that is unfair in the playground and there's no one around. And what do I do? Okay? And this takes us to the emotional reactivity that also regulates these functions, the attention, and everything just goes on to the executive functions. Now, the expectation versus the reality. This is what we expect the executive functions to look like, this first cake. The reality is what we actually get frequently in the classrooms. Do you agree? Yeah, totally, right? This is what we see. And that's okay. We are going to look at some of the evidences we see that executive functions are working in the class. And you're going to help me mentioning some situations where they worked or they didn't work in your classrooms, okay? So for each thing that pops up around this brain, some of you will open the mic and tell me about a classroom situation, like in a few words, okay? So, impulse control. Think before acting. Who has an example of this function working or not working? Hi, Giovanna. Yes. Yes. So the impulse control could regulate how you're going to react when you see a challenging, a bad, disrespectful behavior. Emotional control, keep feelings in check. How has it been in your classrooms? Keep feelings in check. Balanced feelings, how has it been or how hasn't it been in your groups? Yeah, like in number one, in the linked to the impulse control. And flexible thinking, adjust behavior to unexpected changes. Again, we're looking at the expectation like the cake and the reality. What's the reality of your classrooms? Unexpected changes. We had a whole lot since last March. How has it been? Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's modeled, guided. It's a guided, flexible thinking. Working memory. Keep key information in mind while using it. Do you see your kids doing it? Can they, can't they? What age? To keep information in mind while they are using it. Yeah. Uh huh. Mm-hmm. Yeah, their background on the experience of retelling can be self monitoring, self awareness to how one is doing in the moment. So, this is where we're gonna see like that student that gets super angry at a soccer match during playground time and hurts other people. So, this is the self monitoring not happening. So, when he started to feel the anger, he could have stopped, he could have gotten some water, he could have asked for help, but he wasn't regulating, monitoring his responses, okay? Planning and prioritizing to set and meet goals. Do you see your students meeting and setting goals for themselves? Do they need your help, or are they just repeating goals that their parents tell them? Like the my 3-year-old girl, she would say, "I have to go to university." She was like, "No, you do not need to go anywhere. You are 3, not yet. Let's go to the playground first." So, do you see them with this ability of setting goals, or Do they need their guidance? Yeah. 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 The goal setting. Yeah. The goal setting is completely related to anticipation and explanation of expectations. So they are gonna set goals as long as they know what they are expected to do. Okay? And we have the two last ones. I'm just going to rush a bit. For task initiation, to take action to get started on tasks. This is also executive function. So sometimes we have that student that does not take initiative, or they are in a group work and no one gives the first idea, no one says anything, and or we are in an online lesson and they are all with mics off, cameras off, no one gets started. This is also part of the executive functions and organization to keep track of things physically and mentally. So we can connect some kids that cannot organize their things in the space and consequently cannot work. This is also part of the social and emotional development. Okay, so all those things are evidences that the executive functions are working or are not working. Okay, they're not the executive functions, they are the three ones, but those things are the behavior, the evidences that we see. Okay, before we end, I brought this very interesting chart in here. It's gonna be in Google Classroom. How the executive functions develop throughout the lifespan of a human being. So we are going to see that it starts in year 5. Oh, Bia, so kids under 5, we cannot do anything to them. It's not that you cannot do anything with them, but you should understand that they are not fully developed yet. So you cannot blame a 4 or 3-year old for making a bad decision, for example. Like, my in a toddler's classroom, 2-year olds, one bit another, and then you give a whole speech about making bad decisions. But at that age, the executive function that will make that child make decision is not ready yet. The whole concept, the abstract concept of a decision and a consent and a consequence is not ready. But aren't we going to say anything? Yes, you can say, you can show, you can redirect, and you can model. You can remember the brains we learned with the hands. You can connect, and then you correct by showing what other options there are of expressing, that I really love my friend, that do not include biting your friend, for example. So you show the options, but you wouldn't expect that that child would come and come up with the options by themselves. You can read it in details in a Google Classroom, but you're gonna see that the working memory, the inhibitory control, and the cognitive flexibility, they will be fully developed by the age of 22. Okay, by the age of 22, that's where they'll be fully developed. And what we will have to consider from now on in our course is that we are dealing with a work in progress. Okay, so when we are teaching social and emotional learning, we might expect ups and downs. There won't be this magical recipe that is going to solve the behavior problems from one day to the other overnight. Okay, we must expect ups and downs because the positive discipline does not give you a pill that your student takes and the brain matures, suddenly matures. Okay, that won't happen because it's part of the brain. The brain develops according to feedback. The more feedback and the more input the brain gets, one's brain gets, the stronger it will be in making those decisions and following that path. Remember, discipline making followers. So, how are we strengthening this brain? This is what we're going to think about. Okay? And this activity, girls, I'm going to save it for next week so we do not run out of time. Okay? It's already in Google Classroom, but we're going to start with it next week. And because I want to explain to you about the article. So in Google Classroom for Talita and Giovanna that entered now, I always leave the slideshows that I use, and I'm gonna leave two written materials, two texts. Okay, girls? One is the article for the next class. So I'm gonna leave there a written article for the next class. And this one is the one you are expected to read. So we discuss. It's gonna be a super quick discussion, 5 to 8 minutes next week. And I also leave you an extension material. The extension materials are longer. They're not mandatory. You can download them to read on your holidays, to read next year whenever you want to, because they are really long, but they will help you go deeper into the topic. So if you really, really, really want to understand all the brain names, all the brain areas, all the hormones, I've left the article there for you. The material, the resource is there. And those materials are also the ones I use to plan the class. So basically everything that is there I've already told you. But for example, you are in university and you need to write this paper and you're like, I could use a reference, but I cannot use a Google Meet as a reference. I need a document. So it's there. Okay, girls? And any questions? That's it for today.